In this video, I'll be showing you how to make a new Easter egg bracelet using the rainbow loom. So what you will need is one loom, and you want to have it set up so that the pins are in a staggered position, so they are not in line with one another, and you want to have the arrows facing towards you so that all of the opened ends are facing you. And we're just going to be working with 2 rows of the loom for this bracelet. You want to choose your colors. You will be able to fit 3 eggs on if you're using one loom, and so you will need 12 bands for each of the eggs. So I've chosen the main color of the egg, and then I'm going to use a few different colors on each of the eggs to make a design. I will show you a few different patterns you can do. And then I have white for the main part of the bracelet, and for that you will need 65 bands. We're going to start by placing the eggs on the loom first. So if you go to the right side of your loom and go to that second pin in, that is where the first band placement is going to go. It's going to be a doubled band, and it's going to stretch diagonally up into the center row, and it's going to be a long stretch. So for that, I'm going to choose my color that is not the main color of my egg, so I'm going to do yellow. I'm going to twist, and as I said, it's going to be a long stretch into that middle row and push down. And now I'm going to be using purple for the rest. I'm going to go to the center row on the second pin up, and I'm going to do another long stretch diagonally to that right hand row. It's going to cross over, and then I'm going to push this down. And now what I want to do is I'll start on this right hand row on the second pin in, and I'm just going to outline these 5 pins with purple. So they'll just be one right after the other. And now that I have these 2 layers on, I want to remove that bottom layer. So I'll start here on the same pin that I began on. Now this band underneath is a doubled band, so it's going to be tight. You want to pull it out and over the top and into the middle. And now this pin up only had the top layer on, so we're not doing anything there. This next pin, we have this doubled band that needs to come out and over the top. You're always grabbing it from the outside and pulling it in. Flip to the other side, and again you're grabbing it from the outside, both bands at once, pulling it over the top and into the middle. And then finally on this last pin, again you're grabbing the 2 bands at once and pulling it over and into the center. And now you want to push all of this down. And we're going to add one more layer of purple. Again, I'll start in this same spot. And I'm just going to outline here on these 5 pins. And now once again, I want to remove that bottom layer. And it's going to be 2 bands again, so I'm just going to grab them both at once, pull out and over the top into the middle. I'm just going to work my way around. This time we do have 2 on the bottom of this pin. And again here, go to the other side, and again you're taking the 2 bottom ones from the outside and into the middle. And now you're going to push all of this down. And now what we're going to do is we're going to skip in this right hand row. we're going to skip this next pin and go to this very next pin, and these 5 pins here are going to be your next egg. So again, we want to double the band, so we're placing it on our hook, twist and put it back on, and we're going from this pin to that diagonal stretch again into the middle row. It's a longer stretch, so it's going to be tight. And now I'm going to cross over it. So again, I'm going into this middle row. It's going to be one below where we just put this last band, and it's going to stretch diagonally up and to the right. This time I'm going to use pink for both of the bottom bands. And now what I'm going to do is trace around these 5 pins with bands, and here's where I'm going to add my accent colors for this egg. So for my first band placement, I'm going to choose blue, and then I'll go to pink, and then I'm going to do blue again, and then I'll do pink for these last 2. And now once you have 2 layers on, you want to remove that bottom layer. So again, these bottom bands are doubled, so you're grabbing 2 at once, and they are going to be very snug, so you have to pull them out and over the top. Just make sure as you're doing it, it's not pulling these upper bands off, since it is tight. We're skipping this next pin because that only has a top layer. On to the next pin, we have the 2 bands coming over the top, and then switch to the other side. Again, you have the 2 bottom bands, grabbing from the outside and pulling over, and then finally the last 2 going into the middle. And you want to push this in as best as you can, make it as tight as possible in the center. And now once again, we're going to put the next layer on. This time I have all pink. I'm going to push all of this down here first. And again, I'm just going around. And now I once again want to remove that bottom layer of bands. So this time I have a blue and a pink that are on the bottom here to both come off, grabbing them both at once and pulling it over. And now again on this one I have the 2 pink, and now here I have blue and pink. On the other side again, you can have 1 of each color. And then we want to push all of this down. And now finally we have 1 more egg, so on this right hand row we're skipping 1, moving on to the next. So again, we want to take that doubled band and do a diagonally long stretch into that center row. This time I'm going to put green on the bottom, the main color, so I'm doubling it. Again, it's going to be tight. And then I'm going to the pin below, and again I'm crossing here with a doubled band. Again, it's a long stretch, and push this down. And now once again we're going to outline these 5 pins. So depending on where you place these different color bands, it's going to make a different design on the egg. So after you follow this video, you can experiment and switch out different color bands on your own and see which other designs that you may come up with. So on the bottom layer here, we have the double bands that we're removing out and over, making sure the top ones stay on. and then onto the other side. And now push all of this down. And now we want the next layer to come on. And now finally we want the bottom layer to come off. We're doing the two at once. And to the other side here. And then push this all down again. And now what we're going to do is turn the loom around. So you want to have the arrows facing away from you. And now we're going to put the background bands on. So for this part, I'm going to be using 2 bands at once. I think it helps the bracelet to maintain its shape better. So I'm going to start in this center row and go out to the left. And you always want to push down as you're putting them on. And now I'm just going to work my way up in both rows, always doing 2 at a time. And they're just going right over top of where we placed the egg bands. And you always want to try and have these bands be as straight as possible. So that way when you take them off, it'll look neater. And again, you're always pushing them down to the bottom. So I'm just going to work my way up both rows. And then finally at the very end, you want the last 2 bands to connect these 2 rows. And now we're going to turn the loom around again so that the arrows are facing towards you. And finally, we just have to put the cap bands on. So on the very end pin, we're going to put a doubled band just on that single pin. And now for the rest of the way up, we're doubling the band, and we're placing it between this center row and the row to the right. And that's going to just hold those 2 rows together. Otherwise you would have gaps in between your bracelet when you took it off. So I'm just going to work my way up the loom. And you want to go to that second row from the end. And that's where we're going to place our last band. We're not doing one on the very end. And then you're going to go back to the start again, and it's time to start to loop the bands. So on the end pin, you're going to have the top 2 bands are that cap band. The next 2 bands are going to go into that middle row, and then the last 2 bands are going to move forward. And so what you're going to do is take the back of your hook, push back on those 2 top bands, grab the next 2 bands. You're going to have to hold this cap band in place and move these bands into that middle row. Now you're going back down through that same pin, pushing back on the top 2, grabbing those bottom 2 and moving them forward. And so now I'm just going to work my way up the center row. So on this bottom pin here, you have those 4 bands on top you're pushing back on, grabbing the next 2 bands. You may want to hold this in place as well just till you get going, and moving them forward. And so now on every one of these pins we have the top 2 bands or this cap band that we doubled. So you always want to make sure that your hook is going down through the very center, and pushing back, so those two bands are behind your hook, and you just want to keep grabbing the bands in line here on that pin. So we have the two white bands to come out and move forward, and then you're going back down through, push back, getting the two purple and moving them forward. On to the next, you're going down through that middle, you're getting the two white, and then you will go back down through for the purple, or whichever color your egg happens to be. And now on these next two pins we have just the two white, because it's in between the eggs, just making sure that that cap band is always behind your hook. And now onto this pink egg, we have the white on top, and then going back down through for the pink, and then again repeating that same pattern. And now here we're going to be in between eggs again, so we have just the two white. And now here's the last egg. So you're taking the two white, and then the bottom two, and then repeating that again. And then finally at the end here you have just the two white to move ahead. And then we'll go back to the start. And now we're going to do that same thing on the right hand row. So we already did the end, we move that band forward. So you're going down through, you're pushing back on the top four white bands. Now you have the next two white bands that are going to move ahead. And now we have the two purple as well. And now on to the next, you're going to have white, and then back down for purple. Now on this row there's going to be every 3 pins has the egg on. So again we're going to have to do white, and going back down through for the purple. And now there's just going to be one in between eggs that is only white. And now onto the next one, you're having all 4 bands. So I always just take 2 at a time, because if you try to grab all 4 at once, it puts a lot of stress on your hook and it could easily snap. Plus you could potentially lose a band as you're pulling it through, and then you would have to probably start all over again. Sometimes they are tricky to get separated on that pin. And now we have just the white. And now we're up to the last egg. So again we have all 4 bands to move ahead. And depending on the brand of bands you're working with, some tend to be a little thicker and some are thinner, and some are more stretchy than others. And now we have the 2 green here. And then finally at the end, you're going down through and getting these two white to move into the center. And so now I'm going to take my hook and put it down through the middle and push it out to the side, making sure it's going through all of the bands that are on that pin. I'm going to take another band and I'm going to turn my hook so that as I pull it up through, it's not going to get caught on the others. And put this back on. And now we're ready to take it off of the loom. So just very carefully, as you're pulling it off, trying to keep the bands in the same position that they are supposed to be. And then here is what your bracelet looks like. So you can see what the different band placements did for the egg. So you can also try and get them in shape as best as you can. So this is where we put the yellowed band down first, that first doubled band. And this one here is where we did the two blue on the edges on the second layer. And then this is where we did the orange doubled band second. So you can see that it just makes a different pattern. And as I said, you can do whatever you like, mess around with it and experiment and see what other cool Easter egg designs you can come up with. And now you can see it's not going to be long enough to put around your wrist. So you're going to have to add an extension. So for this, you want to take the loom with the arrows facing away from you, and what you're going to do is just place one band right after the other. I'm going to do 4. And now I'm just going to take these two bands that are on my hook, put these on, and I'm going to stretch it out just so I have an easier grab in the middle here to take this center band and pull it back, and just keep repeating that, just making a single chain here. This is going to be half of the extension. And now you want to put your hook in the middle and pull all of this off. And then you want to take your clip. I have an S clip here, and I just want to get those two loose ends hooked through. And now on the other end here, I'm just going to put my hook through, and I'm going to grab another band, pull that through, and put it back on my hook. Again, set this aside for the moment. And now I want to do the other half of the extension. So again, it's just going to be one right after the other. And again, I'm going to do 4. And now I'm going to place those two loose ends on and stretch them out. And now again, I'm just working in the center and pulling back. If you wanted, you could make a different extension that was a little bit thicker than just this simple chain. But just for the sake of time, I just show this one. And now you want to go down through and pull this off. And now you want to take the clip again and put these two loose ends on. And then you have your Easter egg bracelet. And I'll show you another bracelet that I made. This one I used the length of 2 looms, and you can see I used all different colors, and basically I used the same pattern as what I showed you. I just alternated the pattern. You can see the difference in the length, so it should probably fit around your wrist with the 2 looms. And so that is the Easter egg bracelet. I hope that everyone enjoyed this tutorial. You can always leave me comments on YouTube or Facebook. You can send me pictures of your creations on my Facebook page. Please feel free to sign up for my YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on all of my latest tutorials. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please feel free to subscribe to those as well. I'll be posting some new Easter bracelets very soon. Thank you.